Hey, I want you to stop inviting your mom over every weekend, I said with determination, addressing my husband Joseph. He let out a deep sigh and responded, Paisley, you seem to forbid everything. What do you mean by that? First, you didn't want me to build a house. Now you're telling me not to have my mother over every weekend. It feels like you're trying to control everything. I clarified my stance, saying, I didn't mean it that way. Joseph questioned, then what did you mean? How much longer do we have to wait? I, Paisley, and Joseph had been married for 5 years, sharing a common dream of buying our own home. With a down payment saved up, we were eager to transition from renting to owning, realizing my long-held dream of a beautiful house. Our aspirations also included starting a family and raising children in a place we could call our own. However, there was a shadow cast over our plans. My mother-in-law had caught wind of our intentions to buy a house and had started making some questionable moves. She approached me saying, I heard you're finally buying a house. I affirmed, yes, that's right. We've been thinking about the kind of house we want. She responded with enthusiasm, offering her assistance, saying, that's great. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. I expressed gratitude but became wary when she suggested, by the way, have you been to the showroom near your home? I admitted that we hadn't secured an appointment yet. She quickly offered, I'll make an appointment for you. We can go together. I politely declined, stating no, I'd prefer to visit the new house alone with my husband. Despite my initial refusal, my mother-in-law continued to meddle in our property search, even going so far as to make unannounced visits. On one such visit, she presented me with a stack of land brochures, asking, how about this one? It's close to the station and spacious enough for 2 families, my mother-in-law remarked. Her words caught me off guard. 2 families? I managed to utter in disbelief. She continued, if the train station isn't nearby, it's inconvenient for everything. Plus, it's important to be close to a hospital for when you get older. This property is also conveniently located near a supermarket. She seemed to have transitioned from offering assistance to taking the lead in choosing our future home, almost assuming she would be living there with us. I found myself increasingly uncomfortable with this direction. That night, I recounted everything to my husband. He seemed equally surprised and admitted, oh, I think she may have mentioned something about living together. I responded, taken aback, living together. Do you want that? He reassured me, saying, yes, only if you're okay with it. I won't force you, don't worry. His statement left me feeling blindsided. I questioned, if I let her? I don't think so. I couldn't understand why my husband was hesitating to assert our boundaries. It worried me that I would be the one to disappoint my mother-in-law when I eventually told her we didn't want to live together. I pondered whether we should abandon the idea of building our house. My husband seemed to panic at the thought. He quickly changed his stance, saying, wait a minute, I understand now. I'll tell her no, and we'll go ahead with building the house. However, I remained skeptical, suggesting, no, it's all right. You can't even have a straightforward conversation with your mother. I've never seen you stand up to her. I urged him not to fret over it and assured him that I could handle the situation. Why are you so desperate? He asked. I responded firmly, I want to live in our own house and raise our children there. My enthusiasm may not have been evident before, but it's what I truly want. No, I was genuinely excited about it. It's terrible of you to say that. I responded earnestly. I feel the same way about our kids. My husband assured me that he would stand up to his mother, even though I had my doubts about his personality. Surprisingly, the day after our conversation, my mother-in-law stopped pestering us and called me to apologize. Paisley, Joseph scolded me, she confessed. He told me he wants to live with you alone. I'm sorry for imposing my opinion on you. My husband had indeed spoken up to her when it truly mattered. Despite this, I still harbored some lingering suspicion. I shared my mother-in-law's apology with my husband, who had a satisfied smile on his face. He defended himself, saying, see, when I say I'm going to speak, I do. I couldn't help but question, what was that look in your eyes? Did you really say it? Are you doubting me? Isn't that terrible? I reminded him that he hadn't spoken to his mother in 5 years and had never said such things in front of me. He conceded, you're right, I'm sorry. I couldn't help but notice that he was sweating profusely and asked, why are you sweating so much? It's quite hot today. He replied awkwardly, oh, it's just warm. Isn't it a bit hot today? I couldn't help but point out, it's the middle of winter. Trying to change the subject, I said, by the way, let's get the contract for the house. Do you really want to build a house? At that point, my enthusiasm for building a new home had waned. The dream of having my own home, for which I had saved diligently, seemed to have lost its luster due to my mother-in-law's behavior and my husband's vacillation. While my husband continued to express his desire to build a house, I remained unconvinced. 6 months had passed since our argument, and my mother-in-law, who had been quiet for a while, was beginning to lose patience. She started showing up at our house more frequently, despite never discussing buying a house herself. Her demeanor, however, grew increasingly assertive. Both my husband and I had demanding jobs, adding to the complexity of the situation. We both have weekends off, but my mother-in-law has been visiting our house every weekend lately. If it were just once a month, I could manage, but the constant visits make me uncomfortable. My husband, on the other hand, seems very pleased by it. I long for some rest on Saturdays and Sundays, but my mother-in-law arrives at 7 a.m. and starts watching TV at an ear-splitting volume. If I stay in bed, she paces outside my room. I believe my husband should be taking care of his mother, but he doesn't say anything about her behavior. When I do get up, usually around 7:30, my mother-in-law chastises me, saying, "How can you sleep in when you have a guest?" She stays until late Sunday night, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for me to tolerate. Sometimes the thought of divorce crosses my mind, but I prefer to avoid that if possible. I wanted to discuss how we could improve the situation, so I finally mustered the courage to express my feelings to my husband. I told him I'd like you to stop having your mother over every weekend. He responded with a deep sigh and accused me, "Paisley, it seems like you're forbidding everything." "What do you mean by that? First, you didn't want to build a house. Now you're telling me not to have my mother over. It feels like you're trying to control everything." I clarified, "That's not what I meant." He questioned, "Then what did you mean? How much longer do we have to wait?" I pointed out, "You just said we. What do you mean by that? Who else is waiting?" He stammered, "What do you mean? Didn't you just say we?" His face turned red and he started to sweat profusely. I tried to diffuse the situation, suggesting, "Maybe I misunderstood you." I continued, "We can't build a house with your mother coming over every weekend like this." He asked, "Why not?" I explained, "Because I can't get any rest. If my parents visited every weekend, could you rest?" He responded, "Your parents won't come. They have a nice house." I exclaimed, "That's not the point. I don't care about the house. I'm going to ask my parents to stay with us next week." In response, my husband raised his voice, saying, "Absolutely not." I challenged, "Why not?" He argued, "Because it's too tiring. Don't ask your parents to come. This is my house too. I'm the head of the household, and if you can't abide by my decisions, you can leave." "Are you serious? You're of no use to me. I'm done with you. You can't make my mother happy, and she can't live with us if we don't build a house. You promised she wouldn't live with us. What are you talking about? Once the house is built, we can decide what to do, including having my mother live with us." "What are you saying? I've explained this so many times, and you still don't get it. I had planned to invite my mother when the house was ready. I knew it. My mother-in-law had been scheming with my husband all along." "I see. So that's what it was all about. Fine, I'll leave. I hope you won't regret it." "Of course not. Don't ever show your face in front of me again." With the essentials of my belongings, I left for my parents' home. They were surprised by my sudden return, but when I explained the situation, they warmly welcomed me. That's what family is for, isn't it? Our relationship was strained from the start because I couldn't trust my husband. "Dad, I'm sorry. I know things didn't work out between you two, but work and personal life are separate." "Yes, I agree. And my husband and I are now divorced. No alimony claims, no money disputes, just the division of property." However, 3 months later, my ex-husband found himself on his knees before me. "I'm sorry, father-in-law," he pleaded, but my father sternly corrected him. "I'm not your father anymore. Watch your words." Confused, my ex-husband stammered, Boss, isn't this a bit unexpected? Just because I divorced your daughter?" My ex-husband had come all the way to my parents' house, seemingly in a desperate situation, because he received an unwanted job transfer. Both he and I were employees of my father's company, and he mistakenly believed that the transfer was related to our divorce. However, his reassignment had no connection to our marital situation. My father emphasized during the divorce that personal life and work were separate entities. In his company, employees were assigned to regional positions for skill development, and transfers were never used as a form of punishment. However, my ex-husband seemed unable to grasp this concept. "Paisley, please talk to the boss," he implored despite my earlier directive for him to stay away. I reluctantly agreed, and he continued, "No, this isn't a demotion. I used to be next in line for the presidency, right? I can't believe you interrupted me just to say something so absurd. You know what? I think you're wrong. I'm going to be the next president, whether we're divorced or not. Taken aback, I nodded and he left our home. The following day, he handed in his resignation. Despite the advice from those around him that it wasn't necessary, he remained resolute. A few days later, I stumbled upon an unexpected sight. While watching a documentary on TV, I spotted my ex-husband among the people waiting in line for food at a volunteer organization, dressed poorly and seemingly down on his luck. Life can be unpredictable, and I recalled the word regret that I had bitterly uttered to him. Unsure, my ex-husband now regrets his choices. It appears that he is leading a life drastically different from the one he had before. As for me, I'm relishing my newfound solitude. While my work keeps me occupied during the week, my days off are filled with personal enjoyment. Getting a good night's sleep is a true blessing, and I no longer need to be jolted awake in the morning. I'm living in contentment, shielded by the memory of my ex-husband's coldness that I couldn't explain to others. It serves as a reminder when I assertively decline the requests of my in-laws. Paisley, you've done exceptionally well. I hope you can savor your solitude now, my father remarked, acknowledging the newfound peace I had found.